as we go to air tonight, there's an emergency meeting of the National Cabinet. And as we know, this is how it all goes. Leaders, state and federal, they'll sit around the table at the Zoom call, yet again promising all manner of things. But when it's over, do whatever is most politically expedient for them. Now, as before, it won't be about the national interest, because if it was, we wouldn't still be in this mess of patchwork rules and restrictions 18 months into this pandemic. Now, knowing how government and indeed our constitution works, I never saw the creation of National Cabinet as anything other than a PR stunt to help manage the media message, and I think that's been proven right. It hasn't stopped lockdowns. It hasn't got states to do better by small business. It hasn't fixed gaping errors like why some states repeatedly let the virus escape into the community while others don't. The only time it seems to have done anything remotely national in style is when the PM has just thrown buckets of your money at the problem. Otherwise, if these meetings were useful, we would already have a nationally agreed plan out of this pandemic. It would be publicly available, and as a country, we'd all feel as though we were working to the plan. Instead, there's nothing national in Australia's response. It just feels like an ongoing COVID state of origin fight that's getting worse, not better. We've now got tighter restrictions in Perth and Brisbane and a 5-day lockdown in Darwin, as well as the 2-week lockdown in Sydney. The fact that the most level-headed Premier in the country, whose contact tracing team was coping and was not overwhelmed, and who had just four only COVID cases in hospital, the fact that she's locked down our biggest city because of paranoia about the deadly Delta variant, so that we just can't go on like this without a fair income national plan to get out of it. Given that every Premier is more or less enthralled to jumpy Chief Health Officers, none of them who are great experts in infectious disease, I might add, and that after 18 months of non-stop virus alarmism, the public are understandably frightened, the only way to get back to something resembling normal life is to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible. That has to be Australia's absolute priority over the next few months. But to get people vaccinated, 4 things have got to happen. First, to overcome vaccine hesitancy among the old and the vulnerable, understandably frightened and confused about all the mixed messages and the risks associated, as minimal as they are, but the risks with the AZ jab. Elderly Australians must have the Pfizer option. It's unacceptable to me that the young and the healthy are getting fully vaccinated in just 3 weeks by way of Pfizer, given it's 3 weeks between the first and second jabs of Pfizer. Yet those most at risk, older Australians, well, they're being forced to wait 3 months for full protection because between the AZ jabs, it's 12 weeks. Given older Australians have paid taxes all their life, they deserve vaccine choice. And I'd want to hope who gets what vaccine isn't being made, that decision isn't being made on cost, with the reported cost of AstraZeneca being around $20 a jab, while Pfizer 6 times more expensive at $120 a jab. Second, the federal government must make vaccines available to larger pharmacies as well as all larger GPs so that there are fewer and fewer obstacles to getting vaccinated. Third, the states must operate 24-hour vaccination hubs and testing facilities so we put the maximum effort into ramping up the rollout and dealing with testing and tracing. And fourth, most critically, there's got to be some sort of incentive for people to get vaccinated. I'm not talking about a financial incentive. I reject what's happening in the United States. But I'm talking about an incentive once you're vaccinated in and around lockdowns. Otherwise, what's it all about? As well as being about 90% less likely to get seriously ill or die, fully vaccinated people, so says the Australian College of GPs, are only about half as infectious as others. So why not, as in the US and UK, dispense with mask mandates for fully vaccinated people or shorten their quarantine or isolation periods? If vaccination works, as we think it does, as we're told it does, it's got to have positive consequences. Given that protecting the health system was originally the whole point of lockdowns, why not declare that there will be no more lockdowns or stay-at-home orders if perhaps it's 75% of Australians have had at least one jab? Our country needs light at the end of this tunnel, and a proper, publicly available plan out of this COVID nightmare is needed. Not more of this stop-start living. Now, we've been spared the deaths, absolutely, suffered elsewhere, but it's killing small business. It's making it almost impossible for young people to get an education. And as taxpayers, this debt will be a millstone around our necks for decades. If tonight's National Cabinet is worthy of the name, that is, if it can make decisions that as a collective they actually stick to, this is what's needed. There must be a national plan. We must all be told about the plan and treated like adults, and then every state and territory leader needs to treat it like a military operation and just get it done. Because at the moment, all we've got is what looks like a never-ending cycle of opening and shutting and no national leadership. Now, I don't know about you, I think everyone's over the politics and they want to see a proper plan now more than ever. Something like the Singapore government's plan, just announced, with only 35% of the population fully vaccinated. Singapore has just declared that we can't eradicate COVID, they say, but we can turn the pandemic into something much less threatening like influenza or chickenpox and get on with our lives. So no longer will Singapore pursue a goal of zero transmission or eradication, as we've been doing here in Australia. Quarantine for travellers in Singapore will be dumped, and living with COVID will be the new normal. This isn't about being reckless either. We've had over 900 COVID deaths in Australia. Singapore, they know what they're doing, just 35 deaths. But they've decided they have to learn to live with this virus and reopen their economy to the rest of the world. There you go, National Cabinet. Singapore, that's your challenge.